Hi, David here with Independence Live. We're back again. We're live here with Michael Greenwell. Michael Greenwell from the Scottish Independence podcast, which I'm quite sure most of you out there would have been listening to, particularly about a year or so before the referendum when you started up. So, Michael, how are you doing?
Hi, David here with Yeah, not too bad. Busy with work. Podcast has started up again. We took a little break for a few months, but yeah, we're kicking back on again now.
Excellent. So, what prompted you to start the Scottish Independence podcast? I mean, I remember listening to it. It was a good year or so before the referendum, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we'd actually started it about 2 years before I had the idea, because I was someone I'd lived in South Korea for for a year, um, and because it was a strange kind of thing, but because I had got into the habit of listening to audiobooks, because the only thing you could buy over there was either Harry Potter or Dan Brown, and I've read Harry Potter and I don't like Dan Brown. I got into the habit of downloading podcasts and audiobooks and stuff, and even if it was, other things like football related or some of the kind of skeptics podcasts and things like that. And then I started to think, why is nobody doing this, their own stuff with Scottish politics? There's absolutely nothing. And then when the referendum came up, I thought, right, okay, I've got to get my finger out and start doing it, because there was a number of things wrong with the way the media was kind of portraying it, even at the early stages. And I think most people who are independent supporters will know that for many years, people get frustrated that any time there was an independent supporter on, he was usually outnumbered, or he or she was usually outnumbered 3-1, and spent the rest of the next hour being shouted down by the other three with no kind of right of reply. So the simple idea was to get people to come on and talk about Scottish independence in a calm way, where they were allowed to develop their point and nobody would shout them down, just do it quite nicely. And then if you want the rest of the story, it kind of developed from there, because the first person I recorded to was an academic in Cambridge. And then I went over, because I was working in Cambridge that summer, and then I went over to Oxford to meet Andrew Tickell, who's also known as Lalan's Pete Warrior, I'm sure. And he was the second person I recorded for the interview. And then we basically spent the day in the pub moaning about some of these things that I've mentioned to you. And we decided it'd be good to have a second show, a kind of companion show. So one of them was a kind of, I'm interviewing people. So it's more sort of prescriptive. What do you think? Why do you like independence? What's your idea about this? And then the second one was more like a kind of panel discussion where we talked about whatever had happened that week. So it was reactive, and the two things kind of worked very well. And in the middle, we threw in some kind of jokey specials, like our Royal Baby special, which lasted an entire minute. Which is basically, I don't care. Do you? No. Okay, bye. Stuff like that. So it went well. We got up to about 250,000 listens so far. So not too bad.
That's fantastic. And I remember at that time there was a little boom and there was the people who had just started. I mean, there wasn't really any way of referencing, because nobody else had really done this before. You had the Radio Free Scotland with I've forgotten the two presenters now, and then there was another one with a very, very similar name.
I think there was Independence. There was something Indie Radio or something. There was another one. Radio.
And I used to, and then basically the format for that was that to read the news, but the news was taken from Newsnet Scotland, which again had flourished in just the year prior to that as an alternative way of having news which looked at things from an independence perspective. And so people were really clamouring to try and to construct something which could speak to people. What was that, the dog?
Yeah, that was the dog's barking. Because the neighbour's dog barked. There's three. That was Marvin barking. So called because we couldn't think of a name, and iTunes was on, and Marvin Gaye came on. We thought, right, that'll do. So
excellent. Okay. So what do you think was driving the new media? There must have been various motivations here. Frustration with the media, a need to have a calm and rational discussion.
Yeah, and also at such a crucial moment with the referendum when it was coming up, we sort of figured that no one else was going to do it. It was just, let's do it because you're not going to hear this anywhere else. Obviously, other things did spring up, but I don't think anyone knew that at the time how much of a sort of phenomenon all the independent media surrounding it would become, like groups like yourself, and then there's 100 other things. Bella had been online for a long time before that, but became much bigger, and then you've got Wings and all the other stuff. So it was just to try and at least put out the other side of the story, because we knew that not only that, okay, if you're shall we say generous minded, you'd say that you might have felt the media were incapable of doing it. And if you were being harsh, you might have felt that they had absolutely no intention of doing it. Um, and so, either one of those, it still leaves the fact that someone has to do it. Someone has to try and do something. And obviously, we got to 250,000 people in 2 years, but that's nothing compared to what the BBC or whoever get to every day. So it makes it doubly important that kind of projects like yourselves and ours and all the other ones, and now we've got common space and everything, they have to kind of help each other in as many ways as possible, because as many people as we can reach, we have to use the social aspect of social media to tell each other about it and to help each other out, because the BBC, as we saw, and the other groups, it was as we saw at the end of the campaign, can just bombard people again and again and again with stuff. And that last week before the referendum was extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah. Martin James Keaton, he was the one that did Independence Radio, and then Noreen Pax did Radio Free Scotland. That's the first two of the internet radio shows that we were privy to way back in those heady old days. So, but no, yeah, that's the point. I mean, so we were actually off to really quite a strong start, because I mean, actually creating a scheduled radio service, albeit an internet radio scheduled service, is quite a commitment. And both of those projects were absolutely solid. I think they ran properly like 2 hours on a Thursday night. One I think was a Tuesday night, and one was a Thursday night. But we've come to a point now where we've got ourselves, and we produced, I think it's over 400 hours of material of different kinds. Mainly it's outside broadcasts from demonstrations, public meetings, and now recently we've been doing these interviews. But we're now at a point where we've really kind of built a new media infrastructure in Scotland, and it's quite unique as well. It's well, not entirely unique in the world, but there aren't that many countries in the world who can claim to have their own new media set up in the way that Scotland has. So, I mean, where are we now? We've got Common Space. I mean, look at that. That's an online independent media, but it's staffed by some of the greatest researchers and writers that have been pretty much handpicked by Robin McAlpine, I think. And then we've got the National, so we've actually ended up prompting a mainstream media broadsheet newspaper as well. I mean, are we in a position now to say that we've got our own media, or are we still, how far behind are we? Let's be realistic.
Depends what you mean by behind. Compared to some other places, you could say that we're ahead in the fact that we do have these other things going on, and so many of them. You could say that we're behind the mainstream, obviously, in the sense of what I said, a couple of minutes ago, in that as much as we can put out, they can bombard it in the last few days. I mean, it goes back to sort of media theory stuff. Part of the reason they can get away with so much in the mainstream is that people have to work. This is a bit of Chomsky here, sorry for putting it in, but people have to work, it's a fact. So, you come home, you're tired at night, you switch on the news. Okay, in my case, I've got dogs and cats to sort out, or you've got other people, you get kids, you're tired, you've got to make the dinner, clean the house, whatever it is. So you flick on the news, it's depressing. You think that doesn't sound right to me, but it's probably mostly right, and I've not got time to think about it anymore. And just by slipping it in that way, they can still dominate what people are thinking in so many ways, which is why I thought actually in this small, minuscule way that the podcast is a good medium for this age as well, which is why that I was attracted to that one and not maybe doing like video stuff like yourself, because with a podcast, everyone's got an iPhone or an iPad or whatever, or MP3 player. So you can just stick it on and listen to it when you're doing that other stuff. When you're doing the housework, when you're driving to work, uh, that's
You're sorry, Michael. You're just breaking up a little bit there, but I think we caught what you said. You know, just you listen to things in the car, you listen to things in your time. Uh, Kevin,
no, no,
have we lost
I'm
this?
saying it.
Okay. Can you hear us, Michael? Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay,
I can hear you
that's
fine.
fine. It's okay. Sometimes it cuts
No, I was
out. Don't
saying the
worry.
podcast. Oh, no, I was saying the podcast as a medium allows you to do stuff, allows you to hear things while you're doing other stuff in the same way that people can just flick on the radio and the telly and whatever. Sorry if you lost that bit before.
No, no, I think we got what you were putting across there. Yeah, definitely. One of the main things for me is I personally was abroad for a large stretch leading up to the referendum, and I mean there was nothing available in the mainstream media, as we know, that gave a fair voice to the sensible arguments for an independent Scotland. But most of what I was trying to consume online. So it was as easy for me to tune into Independence Radio, Radio Free Scotland, listen to the Scottish Independence podcasts, and read Newsnet Scotland, pretty much. But it was essential for me, I think, to be able to articulate argument by listening to people, well-educated people. In fact, I'll just come to my favourite of the podcasts that you did was the one that you did with Robin McAlpine, which I'm sure you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just found
Yeah, I
the
did a
way.
few with him though.
Sorry.
I did a few with him actually, but I don't
All
know
right.
which one.
I think it would have been the first one. It would have been the first one then. But I mean, the way that Robin, the way that in which he actually articulates these points about inequality in society is something which it can be quite difficult for someone who's not as well read on these matters to actually, if you're having a discussion with a group of people, to put your point across. And I found that this was an enormous resource to be able to listen to different people with these kinds of points because they're very, very well considered and they weren't interrupted and they were allowed to conclude. And it meant that when I was discussing things with other people, then these arguments could come to mind and I could actually put them across quite sensibly and be listened to and be understood and in many cases agreed with. So there was an enormous value to what was getting done.
Yeah, Robin's actually a very easy person to interview, and he won't mind me saying this for him because you basically just need to say good morning, and then he'll talk for 45
Well,
minutes. So your job as interviewer is basically nil, but he's always good value when he comes on.
yeah, no, I've interviewed Robin myself actually. He's good. He'll run with it, but you've got to be, you've got to, keep him directed. But yeah, no, that was one of my favourite ones, and I can't remember the lady's name, but she was from the Scottish Green Party as well, and I think that was. I don't know if do you
Uh,
remember
yeah, Zara Kitson. That was
Zara
just before
Kitson?
the
Yeah, yeah,
referendum.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. That was one of my favourites. What were your highlights then? Do you think?
I don't know. Some of the ones that surprised me were, um, I thought Leslie Riddoch was great, but that wasn't a surprise. But sometimes you get other people on, and you're not expecting brilliant stuff to come out because you're not really sure who they are. You've seen them online, but that doesn't really mean that you know um, exactly what they're going to come out with. But Anne Donohoe, I thought was magnificent when she came on. She's a campaigner, and I actually met her in Edinburgh around the time, and it was a surprise, but because I didn't know what I was going to get. But she came on, she was brilliant. She just talked 45 minutes, great stuff the whole time. Yeah, different folk. Stephen Payton was very nice. English Scots for yes, I rather enjoyed as well.
Mark
But there's
Campbell.
so many. Everyone that came on was very
Yeah.
good. Um, but yeah, the thing is though, just to come back to what you were saying before, something that you know, how behind are we? There's something else I wanted to add to that because you have to think what you said about being online.
Mm.
That's fine for me. That's fine for you. That's fine for certain generations. But um, you know, you could go and speak in, sorry for this example, but you could go to your average bowling club in Scotland and ask them, what is a live stream? What is a podcast? And, you know, in a certain way, you're just not going to reach those people unless people are playing it to them directly. There's a whole area, large area of the population, and probably not a surprise, the area of the demographic that most heavily voted no are the ones that basically consume much less of this new media. So I always try to make the point, you know, when they get asked, what's a podcast? I say, it's a radio show. It's just one that you sort of download. And for yourselves, you know, what's a live stream? It's a television program. It's just an interview. It's an interview program that we do. We just do television. Now, I know that's not true in a technical sense, but it just makes it easier for people. What's a blog? Oh, it's just an editorial. You know, if that can help people to come to terms with it more. Because when you start throwing new terms and live streams and wiki spaces and podcasts, certain people are immediately okay with that, and other people go, "Oh, I'm scared to even do it. I don't want to break the computer. I don't know what that's going to be like." You know, so I mean, there's that part of the battle to sort of to fight as well, which is why the National has been excellent to have actually a newspaper out
Yeah.
and going. That's been extremely useful.
And have you got a subscription to the National? Are you buying it
Not
from the
yet, no.
shop? Are you buying it from the shop?
Yes.
Are you buying two and
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
at a time? Good. I've
No,
actually
not
got an
yet.
online
No.
subscription. It's good. See if you get it online, you've actually got a newspaper on your computer screen, and you can zoom in and you can read it up and down the pages like this. And then when you turn the page, it's got a sound effect, so it sounds like paper turning. So it's almost like that real paper feel, which for somebody who has to work in Spain, that's it does me. Uh, I think there is another problem that I've been thinking about recently about us being how far ahead, how good are we with this new media infrastructure? And one of the problems that I do find, and this happened recently, not to be too petty about it, but we put on an exclusive documentary about, it's called Blueberry Soup, which we can't show you now. It was only available for about 24 hours because of the agreement we had with the producers. You have to pay for it if you want to watch it. It's on Vimeo. Blueberry Soup, if you want to check that out. And it's about Iceland, and it's about the people of Iceland who basically ordinary professional people who took a. As Michael's still with us. Come back,
It just
Michael.
went off. I've just turned it back on.
Okay.
I'm here.
So yeah, the documentary we put on was about ordinary professional people in Iceland who rewrote or are rewriting their constitution, and it's just following them as they do this, talking about personal interviews with them, and there's something quite amazing about what they're doing in Iceland. They were supposedly um, destroyed by this collapse of the financial markets, but in fact they survived it better than everybody else. In fact, they were the first people to come out of the crisis, and now they've got a GDP the same as the UK, etc. But the problem was with that. I mean, that was absolutely brilliant. We could all have been talking the next day with each other about the possibilities of what we can do in Scotland. But what were we all talking about? Newsnight. No, sorry, question time. We were all talking about question time, and what the UKIP person said, and how And the thing is, like, I ended up watching it. I took after I'd done all the important things like read the National and stuff like that. There was nothing about Scotland in it apart from nuclear weapons. Apart from we'll take the nuclear weapons. We want the jobs. These people in the north of England. There was nothing about Scotland, so everyone was watching something that had nothing to do with Scotland, and spent the rest of the next day, complaining that it had nothing to do with Scotland. And I'm like, stop this. Basically, it is controlling you. It's controlling how you feel. You're emotional. It's controlling your emotion. You're now in a bad mood. You're thinking negatively. you should be in a good mood, thinking positively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some people, I'm not sure I'm
I'm saying
entirely with the
this is
theory.
within the yes movement. This is the yes movement that I'm talking
Uh,
about. We as a yes movement are not always as disciplined as we should be. When we could embrace the positive and think about matters concerning ourselves, we quite often get dragged away into the old thinking, old programs of the mind. That's what I mean.
yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, with the old media, they've also got a hatred of new media as well, which tends to, you can see some of the attacks on Wings and various other people that come from the mainstream media. They either go for ignore or ignore, 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 or hate-filled cybernet. Um,
Yeah,
and the journalists, in a certain sense, are told to, they're told what to write, and they'll deny it, but
yeah,
um, it's the only, you could say that the editors and the owners only hire the acts that they want to perform. Let's put it that way. That's a rather nice way to put it.
yes,
And they, and so you don't get someone to write for your paper that you don't think is going to say the right thing, essentially. But what frightens the editors and the owners more than the journalists, and the owners in particular, the people that run the media, and it's a very few it's a very few huge companies, is not new media itself, because as I was saying before, new media is a radio show, a TV show. But what's different is how it's being distributed.
mhm,
Because you're doing this yourself, I'm doing this myself. And it just goes out from person saying to person. There's not that controlling factor. So that the actual fact of doing it helps to get people out of the mindset that you're talking about, because by doing it, we're getting rid of that controlling factor. And that's what frightens them, which is also why they're trying to do, the laws in America coming in to try and make the internet sort of two-track. So it'll be faster. If you want to go on and download a BBC podcast, it will be ultra high speed. But if you want to go on and watch Independence Live, it will be so low, it'll be so slow and so irritating because it stops every 2 seconds because you've been slow tracked that everyone just goes, oh, bugger this, I'm going back to the BBC. That's what they're trying to do this for.
okay.
Because it's the distribution that frightens them.
Yeah. I suppose there is a question to be addressed here, an ongoing question about new media, and that is that it sort of it differs from the mainstream in that we're not affiliated to any press association. Editorial process. I mean, can new media really be? Okay, like Bella Caledonia was pretty much in the format of a mainstream title. The likes of us, the likes of yourself. I mean, how seriously can these productions be taken without this kind of true editorial process that has been the mainstay of traditional media?
Do you mean editorial process in terms of like quality and making the video HD, or do you mean editorial process in terms of vetting what people say?
Exactly, I'm talking about in terms of ethics, etc. I mean, for example, every now and again we let a sweary word pass, and we don't really mean it, but we're making this up as we go along, and that's great. There's so much spontaneity, and that's is wonderful from our perspective. But there's always a sort of a barrier about being taken seriously. It's not like somebody would say it has been claimed today on Independence Live that the government is corrupt. Here's Independence Live as your source.
Well, I think eventually if the content's there and people help each other to get it out there, people will begin to realise. And also, it doesn't hurt to say that a lot of the people on television are buffoons, to be quite honest. I mean, Noel Edmonds, how many, why are we supposed to take these people seriously just because they're on the television? Or if you want to get even harsher than that, look at some of the scandals that have been erupting in the BBC and so on. And we're supposed to take these people seriously? It's rather amazing.
Yeah. And I think what was I just about to say? You've thrown me there by mentioning the scandals in the BBC. It's something. Well, I don't think we should get into that one. Not while we're here. Actually, Kevin, Kevin, are there questions coming in from the viewers at this point? Sorry. Okay, we're just going to. Kevin's just checking there to see if the viewers have got some questions for you. Oh, right, just before while Kevin's arranging the questions, we've got this funded by the UK government thing that's just come up. So we're being told, and I don't know how much truth there is in this, but all our infrastructure projects are going to have a big, we funded this by the UK government, basically telling Scotland that you're not Scotland. I take it you've got feelings on this.
Yeah, I was wondering how many things down in England they'd have to put on funded by Scottish Natural Resources. That could be interesting. Let's try that one with a big Scotland flag.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, you could. I mean, it's an open goal, isn't it, for photoshopping? Basically, you could talk about concentration camps in Kenya. You could talk about firebombing of Dresden. Talk about there's a million and one things, and just stick a funded by the UK government on it. Cash for Honours funded by funded by friends of the UK government. There's just anything you like. It's an open goal.
The one that's on my Facebook actually that's picked up I don't know, about 20 odd likes now is it's a picture of a housing scheme like Drumchapel or something like that, with the metal windows and burned out, saying funded by the UK government. I think that was the one that for me summed it up adequately. Yeah, we're not the beneficiary of anything here,
Well, I saw one of just Baghdad just being destroyed, funded by the UK government.
I think that the next one that might be looking to make a name of is ISIS. That seems to be taking sort of revenue stream from a few sources, and one of them might just be. Anyway, that's the difference for the editorial process, isn't it? I can slip things like that out without getting the sack or anything,
Which actually shows you how much the top line editors with their editorial policies think the public is capable of, because they're protecting your pretty little eyes and ears from these kind of things, which is why I mean, there's always an argument. I'm not sure exactly where I stand on this. It's always a hard one, but could you say when the British government drops a bomb, should they always show you the destroyed building? Should they show you the destroyed bodies as well? And that will give people definitely a genuine idea of what actually happens, funded by the UK government.
Yeah, actually, I've been in a little bit of trouble with people myself for doing that when having one of these sort of online discussions, and I just posted the pictures of the reality of what happens, and people's reaction to actually being shown what they're supporting. Well, obviously, the first reaction is to delete David and block him. But no, I think that one of my biggest concerns with the BBC is the way in which it's been a vehicle to promote war. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, how many million people marched and said, "Not in my name," and yet it's actually been an editorial line taken by the BBC that I don't know, it's like supporting this war, which we're still having to. We say but I mean, it's still going on, and it seems even in Afghanistan it's been lost. God knows how many people have been killed for the sake of securing the interests of large American corporations.
Yeah, and the editorial line is, if there is a big protest like that, it's always there were only 5 people and a dog there, and there was also an equally big demonstration on the other side of town. They do it it's in favor of whatever it was. They kind of do it this way. But there's been a number of times. I remember when was it the Gilligan affair, and one of the journalists said, investigative reporting at the BBC is not dead, but investigative reporting into the British government is dead. And I haven't seen anything in that to change I haven't seen anything since then to change my mind. Okay,
we've got some questions coming in, Michael. So a question here is from Kevin, and it's is there anybody that you would like to interview? Is there somebody in your mind that I could just interview so and so.
I want the guy that does Angry Salmon on Twitter to come on and do it on character, but to do it in character. But the problem is if he knows how
Right.
to do the voice. So
Okay.
I'll get Angry Salmon to do the speech, and I'll try and get actually Alex Salmon to do the voice, and then we'll sort of do it like in a kind of three-way conversation. That should be good. Angry
Yeah.
Salmon writes the script, and actual Salmon does the speaking.
Okay. And you know, if you do it on Skype, like we do here, without your video, you've got an image that comes up. So you could have the angry salmons with the pink beret. So you
Yeah.
know that's one option that you've got there. Another question coming in from a unnamed viewer. What are your greatest hopes for new media in Scotland? So okay, yeah, I think we've kind of been touching on that. So how good are we going to be in terms of independent new media with no editorial process?
Okay, well, there's an open question as to how big it can actually get, with
Yeah.
all the resources that the mainstream media companies can throw at it, and we can't. So what I hope is basically, for the moment, everyone who's involved in it helps each other in one way or another. Oh, you should listen to this. Did you catch that one? Because that's the only way it will grow. When the other side are throwing so much money at it and have such a visceral hatred of it as well. No, it's not that I don't mean the journalists by that. I mean the owners and the distributors and the policymakers that don't like when people are coming up with their own ideas and questioning in their own way.
Yeah, and I think was it Jack Foster and Christopher Silver, I think it was, that were creating or planned to create at least an actual broadcast news channel. It would have been a digital channel on Freeview, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far they've gotten with that project, or if they've had to redesign it. But I mean, the money that needs to be involved, it makes it quite a significant venture. I wasn't sure how successful it was going to be. I don't know if do you know any more about that? I tried to have a look, and I basically didn't see
Um,
much. Just remember at the time it was
I've not
announced.
seen I've not seen how far they were getting along with it, but just off air before we started, I told you I'd looked into the idea of what it would take to set up an actual proper radio station in Scotland. And like money is obviously a huge obstacle, but apart from money, there's the issue of who decides who gets a license, which might
Yeah,
even be more prohibitive than any money issues. Because the licenses don't come up very often, and the people who decide these things might not be particularly enamored with your ideas.
yeah, sure. Okay. Ross Gallagher's asking, how popular is your podcast? How many downloads do you get? And has it gone up or down since the referendum? Up or down?
Generally, um, there were a few just before the referendum where it got very, very high, but generally, um, it's somewhere between kind of 1,100 and 2,000, depending on who's on.
Mhm.
It's been quite steady. Um, there were, the Blair Jenkins one got quite high because I didn't do another one after that for quite a long time. But I mean, I'm just looking through the statistics now as I'm speaking to you. The highest episodes are up around sort of 4,000, and the lowest was down about 1,000. And that was just the stupid ones that I did, just little comedy things here and there.
Well, that's pretty good. So those stats are pretty good going. If we could achieve stats like that, we'd be very happy. Definitely. I mean, we do, but it's not always as consistent. But particularly, we're actually busier now after the referendum than we were before. And not only that, we're also a bigger team and we're producing far more material. But it does seem that it's the referendum that's prompted the new media. And since the referendums, it's been seen almost like phase one of independence. So that was the first hurdle. And the next step is to create, the conditions now for doing it properly.
It's like Colin Fox said, Scotland, independence deferred.
Yes, yes, definitely.
You're saying
Definitely.
phase one, phase two. Yeah.
No, no, I've been speaking to people here in Spain. They'll ask, what's going on, and I said, well, it's a bit like we're gradually getting there. and step by step by step, and it's little steps, it gets less and less and less complicated. And I think that's probably the easiest way to explain it. Are there any more questions coming in, Kev? Kev? Okay, no more questions coming in from the viewers. So, is there anything that you'd like to add to this conversation, Michael?
Just why I was going to ask you, why do you think the no vote came up with relation to the media, in particular? Because I think obviously people didn't necessarily believe the vow, or at least they didn't admit that they believed the vow. But obviously that last week barrage in every station and everywhere was just remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. One of the ex-BBC journalists said, "I've never seen anything like this since full-on propaganda mode, like Iraq, the BBC are doing." And it wasn't just the BBC; it was everywhere. I mean, that I don't think it was the vow itself that made people change their mind, but that last week really did change something, and it shows how far we've got to go. I didn't know if you agreed with that.
I do agree with that, and I was out campaigning and I was on doors. I completely deliberately chose not to look at a paper, not to listen. I didn't have the television on or anything in the last week. I knew that I couldn't let anything shake my confidence, but I knew that my confidence was here, it was here, it was here, it was here, and then just before, something in me just dropped, and it was actually because I knew the reality of what was going on en masse in the population. It was full on propaganda overdrive, and the BBC were extraordinarily guilty here because they were speaking in factual terms. Because I did pick up on a couple of things here and there, but they were speaking in very factual terms. That Scotland wins either way, don't they? They will get extra powers if they, So they were speaking like it was a done deal, that Scotland is now in this sort of semi-autonomous or whatever Devo Max situation already, and so that was a clear lie. It was quite difficult at that point to then try and engage with people on doors, door canvassing at that point. If the question here is about why was the media so partisan across the board, I think that really comes down to something quite simple, which is that Great Britain, the nation state of Great Britain, was designed a long time ago by the rich for the rich, and it's fantastic if you're rich. If you're rich, do business here because it's designed to be extraordinarily stratified. The reality of social mobility within Britain is a fallacy, really is. But it keeps the money in the right place, and so the media is owned by those who own wealth, who own land, influence, etc. And it's their machine in order to try and to control the agenda of the masses. And that is why the mainstream media, which, I mean, I was criticised early on by a few people for talking about the media all the time as if it was one single entity, and it wasn't. I mean, it's not, but it's made up of various things, but if you go right back to the top, it's the same people at the top. So, no one was coming out for us. I mean, even the Sunday Herald, but, even the Sun of all people turned their back on us and, did the dirty. Which I think it was a bit naive to think that the Sun were on our side.
What was it? The writer Dennis Potter. He had cancer, and he called his cancer Rupert because he said that thing's doing the same thing to me as he's doing to the world.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, well, Kevin, I'm just going to double check here. Kevin, are there any questions coming in from the viewers? Kevin? Okay. Okay, Michael, so how long before the next independence referendum?
I think we're looking at. I mean, there's the whole thing with Europe. Um, if there if the rest of the UK votes to go out of Europe and Scotland doesn't, I think there's a case for having one there and then, very quickly. Other than that, I think we might need to wait possibly 8 years, 9 years, could be a while. I don't think, I hope it's sooner and I hope we get a yes vote, but I do think that um, if the European thing happens in the way that it might happen and um, it seems like the European Union is not going to be there for Scotland anymore, then I think the people in Scotland do have a case for a new referendum. I don't think the UDI is necessarily the best way to go with it. That's my answer there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I
But
think
hey,
just
if it works.
yeah, sure. Just following on that point, I think that Robin, when I was speaking to him, he's speaking a lot about this, about how do we get to the next referendum, to the next yes vote, and essentially, in 2016, we elect a new Scottish Parliament. That Parliament then proposes a new referendum, which would probably vote for in 2018, and then there'll be a period of time to negotiate the terms, and then the official Independence Day would be in 2020, which would be at the end of the term of that Parliament. Do you not think that that's quite a realistic time frame, given that by 2018, which is 3 years from now, that we would have built from where we are now, we've got 45% of the country, it was probably more like 50 or 50 odds, and actually built a case which is so watertight by that stage. Plus, we've dropped an awful lot of the psychology, and we've also got a new media infrastructure, which by that stage, 3 years' time, will be just a bit better as well.
Yeah, I mean, logically it's a timetable, but the British government does not always act logically. And would it be as easy to actually have a signed, done, and delivered legal referendum this time if, if the Scottish Parliament voted for it? Would they be able to get another kind of Edinburgh Agreement? That would be my doubt there. I mean, it's very difficult for the British government to refuse it, but I think there is a case to be made that the only reason they allowed this one is that they never thought in a million years that they might lose it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed it. Sorry, it's a bit depressing, but I think it's a possibility.
Why don't we switch off the oil? I tell you what we could also do, we could switch off the electricity, because 40% of Scottish electricity is actually sold to England. And it would just be an official export as of independence. But should we
I
get
think
any
very
trouble?
quickly you'd have the British Army making moves in order to keep the thing going.
We've got the nuclear weapons, you see.
Oh,
I saw we're going off on one here, and it's okay.
yeah, we're going
So
on.
I for Scotland has asked, what's the best phrase you heard during the campaign? One that means the most. Was there a sound bite there? Was there something?
I don't know. That's very hard, actually. There are so many, it's not really a kind of sound bites thing. I tend to get quite angry when you hear politicians doing for their children and their children's children, and this sort of stuff. And they used to make kind of a lot of fun of that on Yes Minister. But okay, without sound, it is a sound bite in a certain way. But you remember that old Labour poster from the old election? I ran a sort of competition on my website, and this was from 2001 or 2007, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure which election it was, but they had UK with Scotland cut off,
Yes.
and then they'd just written "Then what?" question mark.
Yeah.
And then someone, I ran a competition on my website. It's okay, so do you do the graffiti? What do you get? And someone just wrote normality. And that whole kind of idea that we just want to be a normal nation, one where, like if you travel around any other country in the world, people are proud to tell you about where they're from. It's only in Scotland sometimes that you get people that are so sort of, oh yeah, I'll go Scotland. I don't know why. Like you get foreigners that come to live in Scotland. French, I love it here. I'm a French person. I love it here living in Edinburgh. Oh God, why don't you go and live in France? I'd go to, you don't find that in so many other places. And
Yeah,
that's we need to get normality in many things, in our
yeah,
media, in our
yeah,
education system, where we learn our own history, where we learn our own language. So yeah, that normality idea was very important.
yeah. I had a little tagline for Independence Live. It's not. I can't use it now until we get another referendum because it was tune into the reality of the referendum. Which, yes, good, good. Kevin coming in
Hmm.
with a question here.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question from Robert Dunsmore. What's your best argument against independence that you've heard?
Um. Hmm. So the I heard throughout the entire campaign.
It will have to be.
Okay. Or one that I could come up with myself.
No, no, I think it's one that's been given perhaps by a. You might be get your socialists from, the British road to socialism. We all need to work together,
Right.
workers unite across Britain. That kind of. Some of the
Okay.
arguments are.
Obviously it has to be the wee Frees, the Free Presbyterian Church, with their massively sane and rational analysis, saying that Scottish independence would be a provocation of God, because all of the other arguments, all the other mad ones like aliens and invasions and stuff, you could tell that the people who were saying it didn't really believe it. With them, I was sort of convinced that they did, which slightly frightening.
It is a wee bit. It is a wee bit. Yeah, just coming back there. Actually, I before I came back and started doing Independence Live stuff, I actually had an idea doing something of my own, which was going to be called On the Ground Reality Report, and I called it that because we desperately needed, and luckily Independence Live was pretty much doing it, was people actually on the ground with the people that were chapping the doors, that were doing the leaflets, that were talking to people in the streets, because there was this idea getting put across by the media that it was all about men in grey suits. It was only taking place in studios, and that the people didn't know what was going on. So that was, what I was really keen. So I had this on the ground reality report idea. I never quite did it though. I suppose when we think
Well, we had
about
a couple
me,
of episodes like that.
all right, okay,
We had a couple of episodes like that. I went to some of the events and just recorded them and put them out as best as I could, but it's quite a difficult thing to do on your own. And I wanted to go out canvassing and sort of record that, but there was some kind of rules regarding, it's going to people's doors and recording them. There's certain stuff to, and that was kind of difficult to put together at the end.
yeah, yeah.
So never got
Well,
around to
just
doing the
no,
doors.
no. Well, it's not for everyone, but yeah, memes. The memes that came up during the referendum. What was your favourite meme?
All the stuff about
Meat Man.
eat your cereal and stuff was pretty funny. Uh, uh, no, there was a good one a day. There's an argument about how effective they are, but there was so many good ones. People were putting out brilliant, really funny stuff every day. So I don't have a particular one. There's too many.
There
Um,
was a lot.
sorry.
Just saying. Well, I was going to say there was a lot of great spirit and great banter during the referendum campaign. It seems to have changed tone now with the general election. It's quite bitter and quite harsh. But during the referendum campaign, I mean, it stimulated a lot of creativity in people, I think. And comedy was the language. Satire was the language.
Yeah. My favorite. Yeah. My favorite picture, like these kind of. One of them that came out was for for the referendum, but it still equally applies now. And it was just Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory. Underneath, guys, we're done. And that applies equally now.
Excellent. Okay, the tartan cyclist, that's good, we're getting audience involvement now. Tartan cyclist, what's your worst memory of the referendum and what's your best memory? So, best and worst.
Best memory, okay, was I liked going around the Radical Indie thing about a week before it, or a couple of weeks before it, was magnificent. And also running into Stephen Payton at 6 o'clock and still trying to convince people in Buchanan Street was quite nice, just as a way of remembering what everyone sort of did during this campaign. Worst memory, can you count that as including the evening of or the day after as well? Because we went to the Yes Bar the day after, and or on that night as well, and we'd heard that things were sort of kicking off in George Square, and we went round to have a look, but it was all gone. But you know, just the fact of that sort of, we've lost this, okay, and then what's the first thing that comes out in celebration? Neo-Nazis who start, you know, and then thinking to myself, you know, these people are going to get whipped up by UKIP and everything now, and then this is what we're going to be fighting against again. We didn't manage to sort it out this time, but yeah, we'll keep trying. There's also the reason to keep trying.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've got quite a few great memories. It's difficult to pick one, but I think I'll just chip in with, I was at a festival called Doon the Rabbit Hole, which is at Doon, just between Stirling and Glasgow. And it's quite a small festival, but it just felt like a yestival. I mean, it wasn't set up that way, but it was just the theme all the way through. Everyone was yes. I was waiting. I had yes badges on. People were just always coming up to me. They were asking about Margot McDonald, you know, because I had the Margot badge that I got with when the Margot mobile came around. I had loads of the little flags, the little you know, saltire flags in my bag, and I just walked around the campsite. I was just handing everybody, you know, I was just this gift giver. For a day. I had all these, I just had like bags of stuff that I'd taken from the Yes offices, and I managed to dish all of it out, but people wanted it, you know. And you saw the campsite was covered in all these wee Yes flags. Everybody started wearing badges, you know, and there was a massive feeling of belonging to a new Scotland for that festival. That was quite a high for me. I think the lowest point was. There was a guy who came out at the polling station and he told me that he'd voted no because they'd sanctioned his benefits. And I know, I mean, speechless isn't the word. To think that somebody could be, I mean, I just thought this is the pattern. There are people there are a million of this guy, and they're out there voting no for you know, and ruining it for everybody. And the little children that were running about in the streets with us, supporting us, you know, they'd be on their wee scooters and their bikes and stuff like that, wanting the stickers. You know, they were absolutely behind us. And it was great as well, because they weren't just daft wee wains. We were talking to them. We were talking to them about, you know, what you're going to be when you grow up. Well, I want to be a nurse. Okay, right, so you need to stick in at school. Yep, okay, then you need to go to your university and you need to get that, you know. It was just, I really felt like...
People voting no because they thought they'd get their pension taken away as well. That's another example of that sort of thing.
I saw many pensioners with that look on their face. I just knew, you know, that what was going on. So actually on the day, my heart started to really race before it sank, because I just knew that it was being stolen from us, you know, it was being stolen from us on a lie. And these people were just voting from a position of complete ignorance. I think might get that. He shouldn't have asked for the worst memory. He should only asked for the best there, Tartan Cyclist. Okay, Donald Kerr. In what way can the Scottish Independence podcast be publicised so that they can reach a new and a larger audience? This is a good point, actually. Now, we've got the National, which is a broadsheet newspaper. So it's in its traditional format of a newspaper. But in the middle of it, it tells you about mainstream media. It tells you about, in fact, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have the TV guide. Sorry, I tell a lie. It doesn't have the TV guide. But what it should have is a new media guide. It should say, Independence Live, we've got this, that, and the next thing. You've got the Scottish Independence podcast, Common Space, or maybe get something on. We're going to have to try and integrate. We're going to have to try and, build a bridge between the different media so that we can each promote each other. So yeah.
Well, in answer to the question, how can we reach a larger audience? I wish I knew. David's idea your idea is very good. But, I think one of the things is that newspapers in general might see that as, you're signing your own death warrant, and it would be that. So if we promote all this new social media, then we're not going to sell any more of our own stuff. But, that might be a problem with what they're thinking there. But I don't know. How can I get more retweets and shares? We're on YouTube. We're on Spreaker. You can download it directly from the site. It's been going on Common Space recently. It's on Bella Caledonia often enough. I don't know. I think people just have to tell each other about it. Cross-posting.
Yeah, we use Twitter an awful lot, but we do find that there's a bit of a shortfall when it comes to using Kevin's just making the point here that we tweet and include different New Scottish media, but it's not always retweeted. So people aren't necessarily thinking, head isn't necessarily up thinking, right, I need to retweet Independence Live, I need to retweet, so and so. I don't think
retweeting is always the best thing. It does help and it's certainly useful, but I think everyone who uses Twitter might sort of object after a while getting their timeline clogged up with retweets of the same things. I think one of the best methods for spreading stuff like this is simply telling other people about it face to face. Oh, do you know what I heard last night? Oh, do you know what I watched? Oh, you should see this thing. They're really good, these people. That is more effective than a retweet. I think that is something that can really help.
That's the thing. That brings me back to when we showed Blueberry Soup, the documentary about the Icelandic people, is that there should have been swathes of people talking to their neighbour about what they'd watched and having a discussion with their neighbour about community involvement and taking control of the direction of their local communities, and then at the same time talking about watching Independence Live, and there are various things online, and sharing these ideas with each other, and maybe even getting apps installed in people's phones for them and all that kind of thing. But I think generally as a yes movement, we've sort of stalled in that regard. I think we really need to snap out of that, pick ourselves back up, and put that extra 10% effort in to try and make sure that we are all collectively building, because it is actually, you're right, it's peer to peer as opposed to splashed adverts across social media, which are, they do kind of disappear in time. They're there for a few minutes, and if they're not picked up upon, they kind of drift down the timeline.
That's actually the fact that you mentioned an app there is something really important. Like, for example, I don't know who you support or whatever. I'm a Celtic supporter. I've got an app for Celtic, and it's not the official Celtic app, which is rubbish, but it's an app that basically every time something, it's an aggregator. Every time something comes up on the news, in any newspaper, on any blog, it's all there on a list of text. Then anytime goes on YouTube, it's text, YouTube, images, Instagram, and someone's done that for Celtic. Why can't we get someone together who knows how to do this, and therefore you've got an app that includes the podcast, the Independence Live, the all the blogs with Wings, with Bella, with and somebody needs to do that. I do not have anywhere near the technical programming ability to do something like that, but I think I'm going to start shouting for it. I think it's a very useful, or it would be a very useful thing to do.
It is a very useful thing. Let's get the chap or the chapess that created that app. So let's see if we can just get it. If that person is out there, if you're out there, call us, okay? We want you to create the Yes app, okay? If you know how to make an app, talk to us, okay? Let's make a Yes app. One app for Yes. Anything that's happening that's something to do with the independence movement all that data can be collected in one place. Okay, let's do that.
It's done with keywords. I know like some of how it's done, but I would have no idea how to start creating such a thing. But
Okay,
we
well,
need the person that does, like you said.
actually, one more point. Actually, I was talking about this. It wasn't just my own idea, but what we really need is a new media conference. We need to have all the new media providers come together, even if it was for one day. And I was actually thinking about the Scottish Socialist Party conference as an idea of scale. You would probably only be looking at about maybe a couple of hundred people at the absolute most. So you'd have a one hall, it would be booked for the day. You would have 5 or 6, 7 workshops that would then take place off of that, and then your keynote speech. But that means that all the people who are providing new media come together, they meet each other, and they start to share each other's ideas. And as well as that, it brings a lot of attention to the fact that it's happening. But someone's going to have to organise that. I mean, I keep thinking, shall I organise it? But it's something that you know, it's a big one to actually organise a conference, even if it's on that scale. You agree?
Yeah, and it's also one of those things. It's like herding cats. Doesn't really work sometimes.
There is a bit of that. There is a bit of that. If you know how to organise a conference, get in touch. Okay. Okay, excellent. Right, we're just about hitting the hour mark here, so I think it's about time to, you know, the audience. Yes. Kevin. Okay, so somebody calling themselves Margaret Thatcher has said Michael Greenwell is the only person mentioning creating a proper radio station. Surely it is doable. That's what she says. Surely it is doable. Is it?
It is doable with a massive amount of funding, which is something, you know, you need to get someone. Okay, there's lots of rich people that support independence. You need to get backers. That can be done. You can raise advertising revenue also. That can be done. The problem is getting a license more than anything else. And you won't get the backers until you've got more or less a guarantee that you're going to get a license. They won't even speak to you. You know, I need hundreds of thousands of pounds to set up this new radio station. I'm sure if there's a concerted effort for a number of people who've got a hell of a lot more money than me, they might be able to get something past this board. But the licenses come up for renewal every so often, and very often things get excluded, not just on the basis of funding, shall we say, or ideas
Okay,
get rejected.
So in independent media on the internet it is. Excellent. Okay, well, I'm just going to mention once again to the viewers, I mean, if you go onto independencelive.net, you can find links from there to send in a monthly donation. If you can send £1, £5 or £50 a month, it helps to keep us live. Have a look at the amount of work that we're doing. We're striving to do an awful lot more. Provided we've got a consistent income, we can bring you the new media that you need in your life, because you're not going to get it from the mainstream. Okay, so it just remains to thank Michael Greenwell. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much to you for staying tuned, and we'll see you again. Okay, peace.